Now it's 6 o'clock. I just kind of threatening the committee here, Senator Shane. But we will pick up right where we left off. As soon as we conclude the Department of Agriculture, we're going to go to a brief agenda item of approval of minutes for certain days, which you have been emailed those minutes. But we were on the Francisco wording that she wanted to work on. So Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and thank our revisor for having this now printed and in front of you. I'm asking that our report include a recommendation to strike this proviso that talks about funding by a federal act, including the Farm Bill, monies from the Farm Bill, if it's approved for expenditures budgeted for meat and poultry inspections. And then they could lapse the sum of $350,000. I understand that we want to have those expenditures made, and it should be in the base budget, which is this $14,000. And I think the Farm Bill probably doesn't include appropriations. I just think it's difficult wording, and I would appreciate it just not being part of our final budget.
My understanding, the way this would work, since this is a committee recommendation, is that we would recommend that the bill be amended because we can't amend the bill, correct? Okay. And so that would be, all right, questions on the suggestion from Senator Francisco. And you've got the language in front of you, Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm following the language of the bill without the amendment. Is this, put it in layman's terms, if the federal government funds or provides money for this program, then the state is going to roll this money out because the program is funded. If they do not, then the money will come from the state.
Senator Francisco.
So, yes, but I don't think at this point there's a way that the federal government is going to be funding our state meat and poultry inspections. They may provide some funding for federal inspectors, but this is money for the state, and I don't think there are any federal funds that would come to the state for state inspections. So I think my understanding is this may have been a request that was hard to write up and is not very, doesn't do what the intention might have been. So, but it would lapse. It could lapse $350,000. I don't think it will, but I think it's better to just leave this wording out of the budget.
Senator Shane.
So if funding is provided, then we would still be appropriating $350,000 that then is no longer needed to fund the program. Would that be correct if we strike this language?
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure there's any way that there would be any federal funding for the meat and poultry inspections. That's my concern. That it's just, the language seems superfluous at this time. It's, and I think if you leave it in, it probably wouldn't do any harm, except for then somebody would have to follow the federal appropriations. We don't really have a good way to do that. I don't know that the timing would work in terms of them taking a federal act. It doesn't limit a time for that. But they would have to appropriate it on the effective date of the federal act. So I don't see the Farm Bill being finalized before June 30th of this year. Someone from the Department of Ag might be able to help me more explain this, but pointed it out that it was superfluous language.
Senator Shane.
if someone from the Department of Agriculture would like to comment, I would welcome that commentary. I guess I'm confident that they're following what kind of federal funds may or may not be coming in. And so I guess I just see leaving the language as is. I guess I'm just not following what the risk is by leaving the language as is.
And we will not hear from an agency during budget deliberations. So if you want to get a question, you can either go talk to them or visit with them afterwards, which that's what I would be a little more comfortable with, is if we got a better understanding. But we have this suggestion in front of us, so we will deal with it as a committee. Additional questions, comments? Seeing none, Senator Francisco, is there anything additional you wish to mention to the committee?
No, Mr. Chair, I would hope that if there are some concerns, that members of this committee would seek a discussion with the department and give our chair some advice before he makes his presentation to Ways and Means.
Okay, committee, the recommendation, the suggestion is that we make this a recommendation that we would amend this, House substitute for House Bill 2007. Without objection, the recommendation would be included. Is there objection? There is objection. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It sounded like a 3-3 tie to me, so that means somebody didn't vote. Let's just have a quick show of hands. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, thank you. Opposed, no. Okay, motion fails. Or not motion, but the recommendation will not be included. Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of us know that FFA is very near and dear to our heart, and for some reason, the FFA state director is underneath Department of Ag, and it is Perkins funding. This position has not had a pay raise in years. And so due to the fact that I don't want to utilize SGF to fund this raise, I would like to make a recommendation or a note for the appropriation or Ways and Means Committee to look at possible funding for this raise through KSDE. And it's a raise of $40,000 to bring it back up to what it should be at today, along with fringe benefits and so forth. I think that this is something that is very important to us. Many of us who have FFAs, I should have worn my corduroy jacket when I was up here today, but this is really important, and I think that this position needs to be funded and up to a fair market value like the rest of our CTE organizations are across the state.
Okay, so we've got a suggestion that we add a recommendation that the well, you heard the recommendation, but the funding, we would not take care of the funding because it would be in a different agency, and that really muddies the water if we try to get different things done in different agencies. Questions on the suggestion? Seeing none, do you have anything additional, Senator Blue, you wish to add? All right, is your Senator Francisco.
Thank you. Can the senator restate where the money would be coming from and not use initials?
Well, there would not be any money. This would just be a recommendation to Ways and Means that the money would be appropriated from the Department of Education, since this isn't technically an education position, rather than from SGF. Additional questions? Is there objection to adding this recommendation? Seeing none, it will be added. That concludes the Department of Agriculture. So I appreciate the committee's work on that. We do have in front of me, and you had received an email regarding minutes for February 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13, and 17. So I know you don't have the minutes in front of you unless you had printed them off and brought them with you, but they had previously been emailed to the committee. So I trust you've had an opportunity to look at those minutes. So we will look for a motion to approve or amend or not approve the committee minutes for those dates that I previously read. Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the minutes be approved as presented on those dates that you presented.
Motion by Senator Blue, seconded by the Vice Chair, Senator Alley. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion appears to pass. Motion does pass. All right, the minutes are approved. So we will, and I'm going to mention this now before I forget, at the end of the meeting, you might take your folders with you. Well, no, that would not be right, because we're going to have a bill in there. So you might take some of the material out of your folder, I guess is the way I would say it. So we will move now to the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and we will spend some time redlining their budget as much as possible. There were a couple of things. There wasn't a lot, committee, from the chair, but look, and I'll give you a minute to try to find your information. What I will be looking or working from will be the 2 pages, which is Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks Budget Committee report. And no, that's not what I wanted, is it, Mr. Drury? Is that doesn't have the information? Well, it does have on page 3 what the full committee had done, the House Appropriations Committee had done. Is that correct? Yes, it looks like to me it does. Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the page 3 of the Budget Committee report for Wildlife and Parks does show. Unfortunately, you have to take kind of a net change here. So the Legislative Budget Committee, so that would be as House Bill 2007 was introduced, deleted $690,000 from the EDIF. Then you would note that the House Committee on Appropriations reinserted $350,000. So roughly about half of what that is for the EDIF was in the House recommendation. I would note, though, Mr. Chair, that similar to the Department of Agriculture, that the full Committee on Ways and Means did include as part of one of their recommendations to delete the entirety of the EDIF from the Senate position. So as it currently stands, the position is zero funding of EDIF for the Department of Wildlife and Parks. In fiscal year 2026, that is a reduction of about $4.2 million.
So if we take no action or make no recommendation, it would then be up to the full Ways and Means Committee to determine if they reinstate the $4.224 million, is what I had written down from EDIF. Otherwise, because I was looking at committee taking $150,000 from EDIF funding that was in the House Appropriations Committee for operating expenditures. So if there's no need to do that if the money's not in there because of the full Ways and Means.
Mr. Chair, that is correct. If there is no action taken by the committee, that would simply show then that the committee concurs with the SWAM's, Ways and Means recommendation to delete such funding. Of course, there could be a note to discuss it or whatnot. But in order to put that money or recommend that money be put back in, it would take an affirmative action from this committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The chair is not willing to suggest that. Committee, do you have Senator Alley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question I have is that if the Ways and Means Committee were to reinstate some of the EDIF, and let's just say they reinstate all the EDIF, would we then have to take action to be different than the House?
Mr. Drury. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if the Senate position comes out to be what that amount is in House Bill 2007 as it currently stands, that's $4,224,000. That would not be a conferenceable item because it would be equal to. However, though, if those if those amounts of appropriation are different, then yes, that would be a conferenceable item.
Senator Alley, does that answer your question?
My question is, I think that I would like to add $150,000 operating expenses to the EDIF fund, what used to be the EDIF fund.
Okay, so you're doing exactly the opposite of what I was going to do. Okay,
I just made a suggestion.
that's fine. This is a committee process. So currently, that money's not in there, so the suggestion is that we add $150,000 of EDIF for operating expenditures. Is that correct, Senator Alley?
That is correct.
Okay. Discussion on the suggestion. Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize with having the stomach flu and missing this conversation. What is your funding going to be utilized for? I mean, operating, like what exactly? I mean, is there a specific something or another for $150,000?
Senator Alley.
I don't have the exact, what the operating expenses would be used for, but just operating expenses for the Kansas Wildlife and Parks.
Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the intent. I just struggle with EDIF. I think that it's been abused over the years. And so I appreciate the Senate Ways and Means position right now to have a better overlook of EDIF. I struggle when I came into the legislature in 17, seeing that Wildlife and Parks utilize funding to pay for their administration salaries with EDIF. I don't understand how that is the definition of EDIF. So I appreciate the senator's intent, but I'm going to oppose this motion. Thank you. Recommendation.
Okay. Additional comments, committee? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding, and it's been hard to keep up with the budget as it's moved through the legislature, was that the motion in the Senate Ways and Means Committee was to actually have each of these sort of subcommittees do a deeper dive into whether that funding was needed for the agency or not. To me, having a wildlife and parks system is an important part of economic development in the state of Kansas. We attract a lot of people to come in. We get use of our parks, certainly by Kansas residents, but, you know, New Jerusalem, there's parks that people will make an effort to come and visit. So I believe it is part of economic development initiatives. I would support this recommendation, but I would follow it up with an even stronger one in terms of funding, because I would like to see at least the $690,734 restored.
Okay, we'll stick with this for now. Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot, where does this, on the Economic Development Initiative Fund, where does that come from?
That is lottery money.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, thank you.
Gamble and buy a ticket and scratch it off, or Powerball.
Since I put half of it in there, that's, I think.
Okay, that's a confession we didn't necessarily need, but. Okay. Yes, EDIF is lottery money. Additional discussion on the suggestion? Seeing none, Senator Alley, do you wish to say anything additional?
Mr. Chair, I move my motion.
Well, you don't move a motion, but you're finished. Okay. So the recommendation would be to add back in $150,000 of EDIF money for operating expenditures. Is there objection to that being a part of the committee recommendation? Okay, there is objection. And so we will vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Motion appears to fail. Or not motion, but vote. Okay, it does fail. So Senator Francisco, you were wanting to, I'll just recognize you. I'm not going to say what you're wanting to do. You'll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure that that motion failed because it was not enough. So I'll ask for more. and recommend that, just because I know that we care about the condition of our parks, and this is an appropriate way, this is not state general funds from EDIF, this is people who are making a choice to buy lottery tickets to put in Christmas stockings. So I would suggest that we add in all the 690,734 that was, came from it was taken out by the special committee on the legislative budget. And I spent some time serving 2 days on that special committee. We took some time to go through the individual reports and then simply made a blanket motion to just adopt what had been done the year before with no enhancements. And then we took out the EDIF. So I'm thinking this is a result of, this loss is not a result of a deep dive, not a result of understanding the budget for the parks, but simply motions that were across the board.
Mr. Drury, can you help us understand if the committee adopts this recommendation, the 690,734 that was deleted by the Legislative Budget Committee, where would those funds be expended, or where exactly would they go for the agency to expend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking that up as the committee was having a discussion. The department utilizes EDIF funds for mostly, as it stands in their budget that was submitted for 26 for salaries and wages, and that would be mostly for those parks employees. I would also note, though, that the 690, this is where your budget summary will come in handy, actually, because for this particular item, and that can be found on. That can be found on page 46, and it shows then what those changes would be, and that includes about 292,000 for operating expenditures, and those are by lines of appropriation. So EDIF operating expenditures. The other line then would be EDIF park operating expenditures, and that's $398,000. And then the LBC recommendation also did include an additional $109 for National Guard and Veterans licenses. So should the committee make this recommendation, those are the three lines that would then be affected.
So to make certain we are all on the same page, on page 46, you're saying line 12, 13, 14, or 11, 12, 13, 14?
You were correct, Mr. Chair, with the first iteration, 12, 13, and 14.
Okay, I trust every committee member is knowing where we are. Mine's black and white, yours is color, but it's your budget summary, and on page 46, in the box, the summary of budget request, this recommendation would be to fund number 12, 13, and 14 in that box. Discussion on the Senator Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since wildlife and parks work so close to the bone, and they're almost in a huge part fee-funded, I think it's worthwhile to have a little flexibility. My experience with 7 years on the Travel and Tourism Council tells me that all of the things that are involved with wildlife and parks is very much a part of developing our economic and strength in our state. And as far as being concerned about what might have happened with EDIF in the past, we have, it's a new day. There's a whole new attitude in that department now. So I think it's worth considering.
Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm following. So in years prior, the agency received $4.22 million from EDIF. Your proposal would be to strike all of that.
That's already on the table
That's
from
on the table.
SWAM, as
Right.
Mr. Drury would call us, but it's actually Senate Ways and Means Committee.
Yep. Senate Ways and Means recommended that that would be zeroed out, and so the current recommendation is to add back in. I just want to make sure I'm following the math appropriately. Okay.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to double check if we did the exact number, then we have a problem. Is that we're still on that issue with what Senator Francisco's doing? With her number, because it's going to match up with what the House does? As far as
I think this
conferenceable?
would on those particular items, correct?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. Could you repeat the question?
Senator Fagg.
Okay, been a long day. My question is that if we do what Senator Francisco's wanting to do, that's the exact number the House has. So what effect does that have? Didn't we just discuss that, of what that would happen?
Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, to answer the question, as long as your positions are different from the, after it makes it through the entire process, so going to the Committee on Ways and Means, making it through to the Senate floor, then if those positions are different, that would be a conferenceable item. And at this point in time, with the senators, with the current recommendation that the committee is discussing, that it would still be different from the House's position, so it would still be a point of a potential conferenceable item. If the committee and the Senate Committee on Ways and Means adopts the same amount that is currently in House Bill 2007, then that would not be a conferenceable item. I hope that answers the question.
Senator Fagg, does that answer the
I
question?
think close enough, yeah. No, I think we're all right.
Close enough. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Drury, could you tell us where and show me, I guess I'm looking on page 46. Could you tell me where the EDIF funds are funded through, which gives us the $4,245,000?
Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The budget summary document here just shows aggregated expenditures. It doesn't show where those breakdown of expenditures are by expenditure category or by program. But I can tell you that looking at the additional budget documentation that I do have from the Department of Wildlife and Parks, that EDIF, of that 4.4 million, roughly 4.1 million of that is going towards salaries and wages.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions on the recommendation to add in the $600 and some thousand? I don't even remember now. I've lost where it was, but okay, Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be in support of this, because I've looked at some of these parks around, and we need some fix-up in these kind of things. And when we talk tourism, and you go out and advertise this and get people to come here, and then they go out, and I showed pictures to the group a year ago, 2 years ago, that need to be fixed. And so the number of parks we got in the state, I just feel like that's a very important part of what we're trying to do with economic development, because if you take and advertise and get them in here, and they go out the lake and you can't even sit down at the picnic table, I don't think that's a very good feeling when they go home from that kind of deal. So if we're talking tourism, we need to have something that people can live with. So that's kind of what I wanted to add to this. And I think that I know in El Dorado, they've done some work. They took me around. I'm convinced that they're doing what they told me they would. We're not there, but they're working on that, and that's just one part. So you can imagine when we look at the rest of the parks. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Additional thoughts, Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is probably for research. What is the cost of a year-long park pass? And I say that when you go and get your, and I know, I'm getting blank stares right now. I ask that because I know whenever I go renew my tags, they ask me, do you want a wildlife and parks pass? And I'm assuming, and I'm not one to go to a park, I know that's shocking, I look like such an outdoorsy person, but, I don't know how much it costs. I know that I've seen a lot of stickers on the windshields of folks. I have a lot of parks in my district. But then I also have, for instance, my childcare provider that they go on vacation every year and they go to the parks all around the state and they will spend 10 days with their camper and they're paying to stay there and so forth. So I don't disagree with what the previous senator said, but I also want to state that I think that these parks are also making some sort of revenue. I don't know what that revenue is, but I'd be curious to know what that revenue is. And is it just to pay for the park ranger? Is it to pay for the trash service? Is it to pay for all of that information? And those are things that I think that I'd be interested on when we're talking about a fee-funded agency versus talking about pulling from EDIF. I think another thing too on EDIF, maybe it should be talked about that we raise the cap of what we have right now on lottery funds. It's been capped at 50 million, this is where it's gonna go. And then, so much goes to problem gambling, so much goes here. Maybe EDIF needs to be looked at and we need to raise it. And we know that lottery revenues are increasing. So these are things that I don't disagree with what previous senators have said, but I just struggle when we have a completely fee-funded agency that I know that they're getting revenues someplace or another. And I also have heartburn when I see EDIF funds in previous years being abused. Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate, Senator Blue, your comments there. It's my understanding they're looking at the fee structure, and so you kind of have where if it's too high, you'll do that. But I don't think it's changed for a long time, Senator. So I know that's one thing that's on their list of how can we increase revenues so that we can have enough money to operate on, and not operate, but I'm interested in improvements. So that's just me. Thank you.
I think we have an answer from research for Senator Blue's question as relates to the park pass cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elena Rutter with Legislative Research. So a Kansas State Parks passport is $15.50. And I think that is yearly. So whenever you renew your registration. And then it's a $25 annual park vehicle permit. And then the senior or persons with disabilities pass is $13.75.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer. That I trust gives you some information, Senator Blue, that you'd ask about. All right. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reviewing the funds, I've pulled up the legislative post audit from 2019, and there were some pretty serious questions about how Wildlife and Parks was using EDIF funds. Now, the part that passed the audit was the tourism part, which is now at the Department of Commerce. So I would just say with caution, we don't have good data whether this is consistent with the intent of EDIF money. There's thought that it is, but there's no data to show that, just if we're considering sources, not to comment on whether the program is good or bad. But
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Tice. I would say 2019, when that happened, in my opinion, things have changed since then. That's what I would tell you. So I don't have the facts to back that up, but I've been out and looked around.
Additional thoughts, comments on the suggestion for the committee recommendation? Senator Francisco, I'll let you close, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciated the discussion. I recognize that much of the Department of Wildlife and Parks budget is fee-funded. We haven't given a lot of state general funds, but the one thing we've done is give them some funding from EDIF to pay for some salaries. If what I'm hearing is true, and we're taking away $4 million in salaries from this department, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And this is just a small amount of what the department truly needs to continue operating. So if we don't have money for salaries, we're going to lose people, we're going to lose experience, we're going to lose, and we're going to close parks.
I can't speak for Ways and Means, but I'm confident we're going to come back to the EDIF money at some time in the near future. Without objection, the recommendation to add the $600 and some thousand will be part of the committee recommendation. Is there objection? Seeing none, that will be the recommendation to add in that EDIF money, and it goes for EDIF operating expenditures, operating expenditures, parks operations, and the National Guard and Veterans licenses. Anything additional on the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks? Seeing none, that will be our recommendation as a committee for Wildlife and Parks. We now have another agency to wrap up our business. That will be the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Environment. Give you a moment to find the information in front of you. Mr. Drury, I am looking at the document that you provided the committee, the Budget Committee report. That may not be the right place. If it's not, I'm asking you to direct me. And I'm looking on the page 4 that has the House Committee on Ag and Natural Resources budget, and then the full House Appropriations Committee. I think I know the answer, but I want to confirm with you. Number 5 on the Budget Committee, add 8.1 FTEs. That is still a part of House Substitute for House Bill 2007. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
All right. So to start with that committee, I would urge us to delete the 8 additional FTEs that the House has agreed to put into the agency. Is there a discussion on the suggestion? Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. So when we're talking about deleting FTEs, essentially are these open FTE positions that just haven't been filled?
Senator Blue, that's been a challenge for the Ways and Means. We're trying to figure out, we have across all agencies in the state of Kansas, numerous, and I mean a lot, into the multiple dozens of FTEs that we have, and actually probably into the hundreds of FTEs we have that are not filled. And then we have numerous, I don't know how many millions of dollars that are appropriated for salaries that are not filled. And we had a fairly lengthy discussion earlier today, so I expect the Ways and Means to address that topic to where we will pull back the funding because agencies receive money for positions they don't fill. And it's our intent for that money to fill these positions to pay salaries. Agencies have been loose, as a word I will use, with the funding for these positions that are vacant. So to answer your question, I cannot tell you if these positions are funded. It looks like, according to here, the Budget Committee notes that the agency indicates funding is available for the FTE positions, but they have not been authorized to fill the positions. I'm convinced that there are plenty of positions in the Kansas Department of Health and Environment that if they have the funding, they need the positions filled. They don't need additional positions. That's the reason I make the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't disagree with you. I just find it really interesting to see when I'm looking at this, 8.1 FTEs and then 0 funding next to it. And so that's why I wanted to make sure I was understanding and I was on the same page on, we're adding additional FTEs or allowing FTEs, but we're not having funding with it, then what's the point of that? So I don't disagree with you. I just wanted to make sure that we all are all on the same page of that. Thank you.
The Legislative Budget Committee deleted the FTEs, and then the House put them back in. So if we do recommend, and it goes through the full Ways and Means Committee, that these are deleted, it's a different position from the House. There will be continued discussions about these FTE positions. Additional comments, questions, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking on page 19 of the budget summary for KDHE, and they do request some money, probably not enough to pay all eight of these positions, but they're asking for $11,754. And they have identified their FTE adjustments that they'd like to make. 3.9 in air quality, a reduction of 1 in field services, an increase of 0.2 in waste management, and an increase of 5 positions in water. And one thing we have done as a legislature is to substantially increase funds through our state water plan. Even though we are not recommending all of those, quite a bit of money was appropriated, and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment has some responsibility to managing that, and so that helps me at least understand why they're asking for those additional positions.
If indeed it was $11,754 for 8 positions, this is not very much. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the state water plan came with funding. And that might have been some of the funding for the positions, but it didn't come with people. So they have responsibilities that we're now asking them to meet, and we've identified funding for that state water plan. So I'm thinking we also have to identify some positions. And I know that we talked particularly about some of the technical assistance grants for small communities. Some of that work, I would think, would have to go through KDHE.
Additional comments, questions, Senator Ware.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have actually been in conversation with the agency and such on this exact issue. And I asked, because it keeps coming up, are these positions filled? Yes, they are filled. And that the reason that there's $0 is that it's paid for through federal grants and fee funds. And so there's no SGF money needed for them. So for these, and they're increased workloads, new programs, new federal rules, such as that is why they were created. That for these FTE at least, I know it's a good target for money saving, but these are covered. This exact thing is covered outside of SGF.
Additional comments, questions, Senator Ballew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't know if I can direct my comments to the previous senator. So I'm confused. So if the position is already filled and we've been paying for it, then what is it needed for in the budget? Why are we adding an additional, these FTEs?
Senator Ware, do you wish to answer?
I don't know that they're additional. They're filled, that is my understanding. What I said is essentially my understanding. There new things have come up. That's the reason that they are in existence, and it's not SGF money that's paying for it.
Additional, Senator Ballew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I get where you're coming from, but if it's currently happening, then why are we even having this discussion to have them in the budget if they're already currently working and doing the job to begin with? That's what worries me is we're looking at FTEs, and if it's federal grant dollars, then what's the point of having it in a state budget and their FTE? I don't understand the point of it.
Senator Ware.
I have no additional information on it, but
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm reading that it is the Legislative Budgeting Committee that deleted the positions. So I'm wondering if that isn't also part of we're just deleting all the positions that are being added. And if they were added for 2026, then they just got cut, even if they were filled for 2025. So, again, I know that the intention of the legislature was to do a deep dive, but we've come out with a lot of kind of misunderstanding of how this process has worked and at what point, what decisions were made about, whether positions got cut or not. But I think I appreciate the information that Senator Ware was able to get. So my understanding, I think at this point would be they're filled for last year, but we won't have those positions because we had a across-the-board deletion of FTE.
Mr. Drury, can you help remind the chair the motion in the Legislative Budget Committee, the interim? I am remembering that the motion was to delete unfunded or unfilled or vacant positions. Can you help me out with that motion, Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The FTE deletions was a global deletion of all FTEs that were added to agency budgets.
So these were agency requests. And the Legislative Budget Committee then made a motion to not adopt any new request and no enhancements as well. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been told from agency staff or from the governor's office that those positions are currently filled, but they're funded with grants and monies from the fee funds. So they take no SGF money. I don't know what those positions are, but that's what just been shared with me.
Additional questions, comments? Okay, Senator Shane.
just to add to the conversation, Mr. Chair, I guess some of my concern, and I think we've had a bill this year that maybe hit on this, is that my concern would be that the agency applied for a grant and received grant funding for these positions, and that funding will expire, and then we'll be on the hook to continue funding these positions ad infinitum. And I think that's something that this body should carefully consider when we think about these grant-funded positions. Thank you.
Senator Alley.
I noticed that we have, could research tell us how many positions that the agency has, and then how many are actually filled?
Well, we hope that they can, and we will ask. Mr. Drury.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can pull those right now. Just need a moment to get my spreadsheet pulled up.
According to budget summaries, 406 was the number in 25, and 26 is what they requested.
Mr. Chair, I show at the time of budget submission for the Division of Environment, they had 84% of positions filled. I would note, though, that is positions. This is where an FTEs can be a little bit wonky sometimes, as the chair knows, the committee knows, that one You could have 2 positions that equals 1 FTE. If you have 2 part-time administrative assistants, that is an FTE. But for the purposes of the count that I have, it is by positions. So it counts those part-time half FTEs as 1. 84% of those have been filled with 416 total. That is, again, just positions, not necessarily the full-time equivalency.
Senator Alley, does that answer you?
That answered my question. If 84% of the 406 would be approximately 50 or so that are unfilled?
Mr. Drury, would that be close to right on his quick math?
Of the 400, I think is what I heard, 84%. You would have then about 60 would be unfilled.
Okay, thank you. And I think this requirement was, or request was to remove 8. Thank you.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a number of unknowns here. We don't know what the positions exactly are doing. We don't know what the grant funding source is, how permanent it is. Given that the House has a different position, I might suggest that we, rather than hash out information we don't have, it might be best to approve the original motion, let conference committee get that additional information and sort this out, because I don't think we're going to get enough information this evening. Thank you.
Senator Ware.
Actually, I found another note. In all of my, I don't know about all you guys, but I've got a lot of things scribbled. What happened was, if this helps to explain, that those employees were moved from health to environment. So they're not new, they've just been moved from one section to another.
Additional comments, questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you. If those were also deleted from the Department of Health and Environment Health, then there's no reason that we should ask for that deletion of positions that are filled. And when they talked about adjustments, they're very clear again on page 19 of where all those positions are coming from.
Additional questions, comments? Since I'm the one that made the recommendation, my whole position is we are overstaffed with government workers, government employees. Anytime I can find an opportunity to make certain that we don't add, that's going to be my focus. That's going to be up to the committee. So the committee recommendation would be to delete the 8.1 FTEs that are in Senate House substitute for House Bill 2007. Is there objection? There is objection. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
I'm a no.
Okay. So you're a no, but you said aye. Okay. Okay. So the suggestion, it appears to pass. It does pass, so we have deleted those 8. We have another suggestion. Hopefully this doesn't take as long, but we will let the process work. On page 4 that we were looking at originally, you will see the House Budget Committee added $2 million of state water plan funding, and then they have 3 different categories that they put the funding in, $500,000, $500,000, and $1 million. We were told during the discussion period that the rural groundwater septic system and well testing is a, quote, resurrected, end quote, program. That means we haven't been doing it, but we've decided we want to start doing it again. At least that's the way I read resurrected. And so I'm going to throw out the suggestion that we reduce the add to 1.5 million state water plan fund and delete the funding for the rural groundwater septic system and well testing. And that is on page 4 of the Budget Committee report. And that is in the current House position on House substitute for House Bill 2007. Discussion on the suggestion. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I see this as an important part of water quality. We have an opportunity for those of us who live in a municipality to make sure that somebody's testing our water for us every day, if not 2 or 3 times a day. But that is not always available in rural situations. It's important that septic systems work. I know that we have our local health department give out the permits for those systems and inspect them. So we have seen more nitrates and an increase of nitrates. That well testing program would help us identify if there's particular areas of the state where that's becoming an increasing issue. I think it's northeast Kansas. It's a problem for some of those communities. So I have concerns about eliminating those funds.
Additional thoughts, questions, committee? Seeing none, I think it's self-explanatory. Reduced down to 1.5, and the half that million that is reduced is the rural groundwater septic system and well testing. Without objection, that will be part of the committee recommendation. Is there objection? There is objection. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Get a raise of hands because it sounded like a tie vote to the chair. All in favor, raise a hand. Okay. Opposed, no. Or raise a hand. Okay, it looks like a tie vote, so the chair votes aye. So the recommendation will be included. I have several things that I could say, but I'm not going to. But I would just direct your attention, committee, to page 3, right in the middle. You will see livestock waste management, hazardous waste fund stabilization, and I don't even know, KEIMS database implementation. We were told that the livestock waste management is not a one-time expenditure, but the other two are one-time expenditures. I only draw your attention to these because of the fact that you are told in 2025 session that these are one-time expenditures, and so that means it will be incumbent on us to make certain that they are one-time expenditures, because frequently they become part of the base budget for an agency going forward. Once we approve some funding, it seems like they forget that it was a one-time promise. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to recommend we add some proviso language to the KEIMS funding, which is about $425,000. I've had some constituent feedback. So KEIMS is the software that reports are filed for various programs for the Environment Division, particularly with the folks that deal with the underground tank systems or the tank reporting, that they've had to form a working group because it's been so problematic implementing the new software, and they've not felt like they've had a very good response from the agencies. So I understand that this funding is related to make the entire system better. It's not necessarily directed at the tanks, but I would like to add proviso language that Health and Environment make a report to the State Finance Council in fiscal year 26 to update them on the problems with the tank group and the necessary upgrades, and a general report from the working group before this funding be approved to go forward for system upgrades.
Questions on the suggestion? Senator Alley.
I don't have a question on that suggestion, but I do have a question. It seems to me that this says Bureau of Waste Management, and the dollar figure was 250,000 SGF for 300 contract hours. That's $833 a contract hour. What is that for? That's a question that I would.
You're asking that question of Mr. Drury, I'm guessing, unless
I would guess so, yes.
Titus wants to answer it.
I mean, it's to upgrade the software. They're trying to integrate their databases to make it better, and it's contract software engineers. So I can't say whether that's reasonable or all of that goes to that contract hour, but roughly, and yeah. So.
Senator Alley, do you have additional questions, or does that? I don't know. Mr. Drury, do you want to add to that, or did Senator Titus cover it? Okay, we're good. You're good, okay. Additional questions, comments on, so Mr. Drury, do you understand enough of what he's asking to be able to get something for the committee recommendation? Mr. Drury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding, and I need to work with the revisor's office for the proviso language, but essentially a proviso attached to the funding that says expenditures can only be dispersed insofar as so long as the Division of Environment comes to the State Finance Council and talks about the improvements upon the tanks, I believe it is, or in order for those funds to be released, they'll need to have a conversation with the State Finance Council.
Senator Titus, is that close enough to what? Yes. Okay. Without objection, that would be part of the committee recommendation. Is there objection? Seeing none, that would be part of the committee recommendation. Additional things, committee, that you wish to put into the committee recommendation for Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Environment? For those of you who are brand new to the process, you can see how much fun it is working budgets. It's a thrill, and it is a difficult thing once money is put into government to take it back out for some people. For me, it's like, let's just start at zero on everybody, but that's a whole nother topic. If there's nothing additional for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Division of Environment, that will be the committee recommendation that the chair will be making to Ways and Means on Monday. Committee, I do appreciate your patience and hanging around for a little while this evening. And so what it does is, unless you have a committee tomorrow, it allows you to do whatever you so well please tomorrow. Now, there are certain members on this committee, like the chair, the vice chair, and Senator Fagg, that will be spending a lot of time in Ways and Means tomorrow, as in who knows how many hours we will spend, because the rest of you are gone enjoying your day. But don't want you to feel sorry for us or anything. I just thought I'd throw that out. With that, we are adjourned.